Well, thank you once again for joining me for an NFT NYC conversation before the big show, April 12th through the 14th. Many of us here at our team and, of course, in the community are excited to hear the new things that you're working on. And our conversation, you and I were just sharing before we hit the live button, got me quite excited as you're bringing and manifesting, bringing to market things that we've been discussing, amongst ourselves for many, many years. For those that don't know you, please introduce yourself to me and a little background, and we'll dive in.
Sure. Cheers, Ian. So my name is Ori Ohayon. I'm the co-founder of a company called On-Chain Listings. It's a Web3 prop tech company. Prior to that, I was a banker, started off my career at Goldman Sachs, moved out of the banking space about 3 years ago, went into Web3, ran a few NFT companies, did a bunch of consulting across the Web3 space. And now my full focus is on real estate title transfer on-chain.
When you think about where things are at right now with real estate title transfers in terms of no Web3 automation, can you give us a survey of the problem that the developed world is currently facing so that we understand why there's motivation to tackle this problem that really impacts just about anybody that owns a home, wants to sell or buy a home, or even commercial real estate, of course?
Totally. Look, to be honest, when we thought up of the company, it was because my partners and myself were going through the process of buying our first homes. And we realized there was a bunch of issues. One of them being that there are so many parties that sit in the middle of the transaction that fundamentally just block it from happening faster and more effectively.
Yeah.
And we were watching this happen, and we were also watching the price of the transaction go up and up, just in terms of like settlement fees. And then the cost of like the title searches and all these searches for documents that should be in some form of a decentralized ledger. And then when we thought about it, we said, okay, cool. If we can put the deed of ownership or the land title on chain, then we should be able to at least not eradicate the need for these intermediaries, but to streamline a lot of their responsibilities. And then we worked on it a bunch, and we've solved the issue, which essentially means that by having a hybrid of a centralized and decentralized ledger, you can cure a lot of these issues. And by doing so, you cut down the cost of settlement by around 50%, because there's no more paper fees, there's no more title search fees.
How about time savings? Because if you save half the money, big deal, that's a huge market, but a lot of people are motivated by time savings. What do you envision the time savings can be, either with your solution or other solutions that will come to market in a similar goals?
So it's immense, because I think decentralizing it allows the opportunity for having local competition, like basically go up against you when it comes to who's the title lawyer who's signing off on the transaction, who's the real estate broker who's signing off on the closing statements. By allowing users who didn't know the buying and selling parties, but who are able to log in as verified users and then sign a transaction, you're speeding it up quite a bit. And these are still licensed lawyers or brokers and so on. Like there's no, it's not like I can just jump in and sign off on the transaction. And that's because of a wallet account basically protecting me from entering that. But we've tested it. We've been working on it. We can make it closed within like 30 minutes versus taking like 2 weeks up to a few months in the US.
Amazing.
And it's not really like, you're not really rattling too many cages. You're just streamlining the way the work is done.
How about when you compare this approach from commercial real estate to residential real estate? I'm not sure if your solution is providing something for both the enterprise and consumer market or not, but maybe you could tell us that. But more specifically, when you think about this automation and you think about it scaling over time, do you see this making a bigger impact with the one-of-one kind of transactions between different, individual owners, or you see this more playing out long-term for the mass scale through commercial real estate?
So I think we're starting off with residential because it's a bit more clean cut. But I think when you look at the scope and growing into commercial, NFTs have the capacity, obviously, to hold a whole bunch of different information and file types. all we're going to be doing is within those NFTs and within those smart contracts is we're essentially locking in different legal contracts for closing statements. So there will just like the way we're building it is there'll just be different templates to run on. So based off of the different variables in the closing, based off of if there's a lien on the property, if there are different mortgage amounts, or even multiple parties in a closing, it just changes the type of contract you have to use. But those are templates. The only thing that really, like what we're focused on is essentially creating a protocol that can process it versus a specific contract.
When you think about who benefits most, who comes to top of mind? Is it the buyer? Is it the seller? Is it the huge conglomerates that are buying up homes and renting them out to everybody? I mean, when this hits scale, who's kind of set to benefit most?
Mm-hmm.
And are those parties coming to the table to play in the sandbox and try to make something happen in this regard?
So immediately, like the first to benefit from it is going to be the buyers, because the closing fees are gonna shrink down. The time to settlement is going to shrink down, and then the land registry that they're able to collect is going to be publicly available. So all that information, the moment it's minted, is open to all. Longer term, it's going to impact most significantly brokers, title lawyers, and the guys collecting the land registries. And that's where it gets really, really interesting, because now, okay, a title lawyer, for example, instead of processing 1 to 5 transactions a day, just logging into some form of a ledger or portal, they can sign off on 20, 25 transactions a day because it takes way less time. The contracts are fixed. All they have to do is review the variables. So you clean up the work a lot, and there's no more need to double check land registries because it's been tracked since day one.
Right. What is the biggest hurdle that you faced from going from ideation to actually developing out the initial product and being ready to bring it to market?
It's the complexity of it. So it is, like, real estate is probably one of the most complicated products you can work on with implementation on a blockchain. The way I always simplified it to myself is tokens are the new form of equity, and NFTs are the new form of deed or title to some kind of unique asset. The most regulated and complicated asset to move across is probably real estate.
Right.
The first companies I worked on it was art, sports memorabilia, watches, things like that. Those aren't highly regulated products.
No.
The real estate space has so many rules, and in the US, it's fractioned across all the different states and provinces. Yeah. So all the rules are different, and all the land registries are different. Right. So what we had to do is create a cookie cutter that could be easily tweaked for different regulatory environments. So that was the most difficult. We've been working on this for a long time, and we've hit our heads against brick walls many times. But I think by focusing on the protocol layer and creating a product that could be applied across the board, we've created a tool that will scale quite quickly.
What would be the best case scenario in terms of this market opening up? Do you have some sort of scheduled anticipation that by 2024 or by 2026, 1% or 10% of homes could be leveraging Web3 and decentralized server type automation in order to save time and save money with title transfers for private residential homes?
Yeah, I think, look, we're going to start state by state. We're going to start with Florida. Because we have the most experience there, and it's the most conducive to blockchain tech. Right. But our goal is really its implementation into existing platforms. So we're creating an API product. We don't have a native website. It's all just going to be plugins. And the goal with that is we work with brokerage houses that are already focused on Web2, and just show them how to use a Web3 tool. But it's all behind the guise of a Web2 business. And I think this is like a good lesson for pretty much anyone working in Web3 is if you're creating a Web3 tool, remember that the mass market is still Web2. It's still web-based. You can't go into just a traditional real estate brokerage house and explain to them that NFTs make sense for real estate. It's going to be very difficult.
Right.
But if you hide it behind an interface that everyone is very accustomed to, and you create a process that's very similar to what people are used to, then you'll get mass adoption. So we're hoping that approach works.
Well, mass adoption will happen. This is certainly inevitable. As we wrap up, let me go to a broader view and compare what you're doing with residential homes to what lots of people are talking about when it comes to cars, right? So, huge problem with DMVs, car transfers, car pink slips. When you think about scale and you think about benefit, can you just compare kind of like these two archaic systems of how we transfer ownership of a car or a house from another, and how you see these things playing out? Because they're totally different things to work with, right? Real estate, you're working with a bunch of different mafias. And cars, you're basically just working with an extremely slow institution of the government. So a totally different ballpark. But I thought you might have some insight in that, because a lot of the utility of NFT conversation around real, like saving people time and money, removing middlemen, oftentimes kind of falls down into, well, what if we apply it to titles for homes and pink slips for cars?
Yeah. So I actually think it's easier to apply this to pink slip for cars because there are fewer nodes who have to sit in the middle to verify that transaction. The most difficult thing is you've got to create it per car dealership at this level, or at least per car brand, because there's no centralized body watching it. So we've attempted to actually have this conversation. No one has been willing to try it because it's a significant build out. It's not going to be like simple to do. But very simply put, with a VIN, a pink slip, and a centralized database, let's say a VW database in Toronto, you can basically conduct those transactions using blockchain, and you can track the ownership. And if you want to even get fancy, you can literally put an NFC tag that has a geolocator and know where that car is, where it was bought, and who owns it. You can do a whole bunch of very cool stuff like this. The main issue is that the sunk cost is going to be relatively high.
Right.
And a lot of Web 2 people trying to break into the Web 3 space, or at least sample the Web 3 space, aren't going to be willing to pay those sunk costs, which is why some kind of SaaS tech backend solution is probably going to be the best, because it's something I can freely feed to people, and I can take a backend feed off of it versus having to create a unique one for every dealership.
Right. Well, I imagine your partner and you are going to give more specific insight as you have prepared something for us at NFT NYC. That'll be great for people to tune into. Let me ask you this. Is there anything you're looking for? Like, how can the community participate? Are you looking for clients? Are you looking for investors? Are you looking for strategic partners in some sort? How can the NFT NYC community come and provide strength to what you already have cooking in the oven?
Of course. Across the whole board, we're looking for everything. So we're looking obviously for strategic partners. So real estate developers, real estate brokers, anyone who's fascinated by the prop tech space. We're working with a whole bunch of people, and we're already onboarding partners and users for the platform.
Yeah.
And we're about halfway through raising our seed funds. So we've already filed patents. We've got pretty far in terms of product development, but we need to finish our funding. So we're getting there, but yeah, that's what we're looking for.
And how about talent? You guys hiring or looking to hire after you close that seed round?
Yeah, after we close the seed round, we will need to hire for sure. Anyone who has experience in real estate, so prop tech, specifically brokers who want to be partner brokers, and obviously marketing, because I am.
So it sounds like immediate things are opportunities for strategic partnerships, or of course accredited investors that might want to jump in and participate deploying capital with your existing seed round, and then in the near future hiring more talent. How should folks reach out and get in touch with you and your company?
So find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, or website onchainlistings.com. Or just reach out to me on LinkedIn directly.
Well, as always, good to share a conversation with you. And I look forward to spending time with you and everybody here watching through the camera. We see you there. We know you're watching. Thanks for your attention. We'll see you April 12th through the 14th at the Javits Center. Until then.